We do not have any of the original manuscripts of the Bible. The originals are lost. We don't know when, and we don't know by whom. What we have are copies of copies. In some instances, the copies we have are 20th generation copies. C.J. Werleman, Jesus Lied, page 41. In today's world, the integrity of the Bible is in question. People used to ask, is it true? But now they ask, is that what the Bible really said? What I want to do now is give you reasons for confidence in the Scriptures. So, do we still have the original manuscripts of the New Testament? In short, no, we do not. These original manuscripts, all written on fragile papyri, the ancient world's paper, were handed over and over again to scribes who copied them all the way up until perhaps the end of the 2nd century, so many times that the papyri would have worn out. Now, this may sound alarming, but it doesn't make the Bible untrustworthy. If we want to understand New Testament reliability, there are 4 questions that we need to ask. The first question to think about is, how many textual variants are there? Well, there's about 140,000 words in the Greek New Testament. And the best estimate today is that there's 500,000 textual variants, or a little over 3.5 variants per word in the Greek New Testament. Now, these numbers seem astronomical when considering these ancient manuscripts, but let's talk about 2 key factors: quantity and time. The reason that we have a lot of textual variants is because we have a lot of manuscripts. Consider other ancient authors. The average classical Greek writer has less than 15 copies of his works still in existence. And if you were to stack them up, they would be no more than about 4 feet high. And the earliest copies of their works typically date more than half a millennium after they were written. Consider now the New Testament manuscripts. The earliest manuscripts are only decades from the originals. And if you were to stack every copy of every New Testament manuscript that we have on top of each other, it would be more than 1.25 miles high. So if we're going to be skeptical about the New Testament, and we were to apply that same skepticism to other ancient Greco-Roman literature, we would just be plunged right back into the Dark Ages. What we really have is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to the New Testament text. Question 2. What kinds of variants are there? Of the 500,000 or so variants that we have, more than 99% of them make no difference at all. If a word is spelled incorrectly, that counts as a variant. But there were no dictionaries in the ancient world, and words would be spelled in a variety of ways, even by the same author, many times. Word order also in Greek is a matter of emphasis rather than a matter of meaning, like it is in English, because Greek is a highly inflected language. So you can change the word order without changing the meaning. What we need to focus on are the 1/5 of 1% textual variants that actually affect things. This group is both meaningful and viable. That's what I mean by the 1/5 of 1%. They affect the meaning, and they have a possibility of going back to the original. For example, in Mark chapter 9, Jesus is telling his disciples why they couldn't cast out a particular demon. He says this kind can only come out by prayer. Other manuscripts we have found finish the verse by adding the phrase, and fasting. This variant has implications on Christian practice, but not on doctrine. It's important, but it's not that important. Question 3. What theological beliefs depend on textually suspect passages? When examining the deity of Christ, we understand that the Bible claims that Jesus is God. But Dan Brown argues in the Da Vinci Code that this belief originated from Emperor Constantine at the Council of Nicaea in AD 325. Well, let's look at the evidence. The papyrus known as P66, which is a manuscript of John's Gospel and dated almost 150 years prior to the Council of Nicaea, clears this issue off the table with its affirmation of Jesus' deity in chapter 1. In fact, there's not a single manuscript in any language written at any time that denies the deity of Christ in John 1:1. Well, that's the deity of Christ. What about some other Christian beliefs? What about his virgin birth? What about the resurrection? Was Jesus really raised from the dead? Does the New Testament actually affirm that? And here's the thing I want to say, that even though some manuscripts may not affirm those doctrines in every single place, we have no manuscript that has any credibility to it that denies any essential Christian belief. And finally, question 4. Is the Bible that we have today what they wrote then? In all particulars, we don't know. It's probably not identical. But in all essentials, yes. What we have today in all essentials is the very Word of God. No essential Christian belief is jeopardized by any viable variant.